Welcome to Adventures in Solitaire. Today we'll be reviewing Legendary Kingdoms, The Valley of Bones. So, I think that there are always like games or things that we're interested in sharing with those around us. We found them interesting, we want to share that interest. And then I think there are things that we are excited about sharing, that we feel the impulse that we have to share with someone. We have to share that experience. This, for me, is one of those. I think that, well, we'll get to what I think. Obviously, I'm excited. So, this is about, of course, Legendary Kingdoms, The Valley of Bones, written by Oliver Holm. Forgive me if I butchered that. And then, of course, it looks like we've got it is produced by, sorry, Spider Mind Games. So, rather than talk to you about the influences myself, I might just turn to the back. So the influences for Legendary Kingdoms from the author himself is fighting fantasy, sorcery, fabled lands from authors such as Jamie Thompson and Dave Morris. He also mentions Duel Master and Blood and Sword, also by the same two authors. So those are some really good roots, some really good inspirations to have, I think. It also draws from a little bit from D&D. My understanding is that this is actually based on, I believe, and they someone can correct me if I'm wrong, from a kind of like a private campaign setting. It must have been expansive because this book itself is huge. There is a lot to do here, tons. Like I want to go through it again, which is rare for a game book. Usually I do a game book and I'm just kind of done. I'm almost glad I've got to the end of it. I am glad I get to the end of this one because I want to see everything there is to see and move on, but I do want to go back. Um, but it is absolutely expansive, and that campaign must have been huge because there are 6 books that they are planning on coming out with. They have this one complete. They have the next in the series complete, which is the name lost me. Crown and Tower. Currently awaiting on shipment on that. I should soon have that. I'm very excited about that. I have read a little bit of the PDF that was provided for backers there. So huge, huge campaign setting. So one of the things that they had mentioned is that it had its some of its roots in some books by Dave Morris and Jamie Thompson. And one of those was the Fabled Land series, which has been my favorite series for game books. It completely changed the way that I thought about game books when, and forgive the condition, Lone Wolf was popular, and then of course before that, Fighting Fantasy. So it is absolutely an open world game. It will allow you to go do things that, well, you might not want to be doing, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, it there. I wouldn't say that it's got training wheels. I also wouldn't say that it's overly mean or brutal about where you can go. It does feel like somehow they have managed to allow the player to guide themselves through the literature so they know when they're getting to a situation that they may not be ready for. I was able to make it through the entire book without having a character die. I though I did feel lucky, if that says anything. But I think that's the way it's meant to be. I think it's meant to have some pressure luck there. So I talked a little bit about it's based on a D&D campaign setting. I talked about its roots, that it is open world. So I want to talk a bit about the mechanics of the game. So you will be running a party of up to 4 characters, and they recommend, and I would as well, that you run 4 characters. You are choosing from a roster of 6. Um, and if that's something that immediately like they're like, oh, okay, a 4 character party, and that's something that you do not like. Understand, I'm right there with you. I do not like large party solo or co-op role-playing settings. My preference is to run one, two at max, and probably only if I'm pressed. But I did not mind. And in all honesty, I feel like I would be missing something if, in multiple ways, if I did not have a larger party. It is a little harder on you if you do not have a full party and you want to try, if you can, and have a balanced party. Having a couple of mages and a couple of fighters, you can probably work your way through it, but it probably on average is going to be a little easier if you have a spread on stats. You're also allowed to create your own character, um, though I will say that each character in this game has its roots in an area of the world. So in the Valley of Bones, you'll have a character that's rooted there, and if I remember correctly, it is Akihiro, if I got his pronunciation of that right, Akihiro of Chalice. Yeah, because Chalice is here. So the book's not about him, or Drake Hollow is not about one of the other characters, or Longport Bay isn't about I think it's Sarah Jessica Dane, or yeah, Sarah Jessica Dane. I don't think that it's not. I don't think it's not just about that character. In fact, most of it's not. But it certainly will have more instances where you will encounter elements that involve them. Like they'll go to their hometown and people will know them, for example. And then, of course, you'll have instances where through all of the books, where all of the characters matter. So having all of the characters that are preset will give you more personalization to that story, and I think that that's important. Personally, I tend to go with three, and then I go with one of my own that is just I usually that's like my character, and that adds for a little bit of replayability because when I go for three, I have three more to go through and like completely play that story different with other characters, or maybe with some of the same characters, or maybe choose some different choices there. So it's a very cool system. And one of the things that I'll also say about it is that the video game industry has done a good job of having some games that make you feel attached to your character, where loss of that character is ever present. I think XCOM is a good example. But in those types of games, you're really worried about losing your character due to emergent gameplay or longevity of that character, like how long you've had them and how much you built them up. Though that is absolutely present here, you'll also feel the loss because you will absolutely get attached to the characters because they will have a story that goes on beyond the emergent gameplay. They will have interactions with other characters beyond the gameplay. So I thought that was awesome. I have not seen that done before. Not that it hasn't been, but I haven't seen it. As far as the way that like skills or really any other mechanics like that work, it's pretty much all skills. Um, you have five of them. You will be assigned at start, or you'll create at start a character that has a base set or skills or values for the skills, and the number of that value is how many dice you roll. Six-sided dice. You will be rolling a lot of dice, and that's not a bad thing. It's a ton of fun, especially when you get a lot of dice on the table and you get to watch them roll. I love that. Every time, it never fails. I love it. So in this case, we have Brash, and if he's talking to someone using his charisma skill, he's rolling five dice. And then what the game will do is they'll say, hey, this is a kind of an average situation. You're going to be rolling, and it won't talk like that, but that's what you figure. They're going to give you a DC of 4, a difficulty check or of 4 that you have to roll against. So you'll roll all five of those dice, and you're trying to get a 4 or above, and it will tell you how many of those that you need to be successful on. So it'll say difficulty a check of 4, and you need 2 successes. Well, with 5 dice, that's pretty good odds that Brash will be able to talk his way out of that situation. Combat works the same way. You will have a DC check for the enemy, they'll have a DC check for you. You'll have a certain number of dice, and they'll have a certain number of dice. You'll both always be doing damage to each other. When you're rolling for skill checks, it'll either be a party check with two characters rolling, or it will be unless the rules state otherwise, or sorry, unless the text states otherwise, you'll have you'll have a solo character, just one character rolling. Sometimes you'll have your party split up, where you got to really be careful who you pair up because of their skills and maybe other potential situations. With combat, you're always fighting with all your party, unless again your party split up, and then that's another thing where you want to be careful with who you're partying. You don't want your two wizards partying up, for example. That would not be good. Health is just as basic as you would think. You take a damage, and then um, and that's for I believe that's for every success. You'll take a damage, and then when you're down to zero, you are dead. That character's gone. There's no coming back from that. They're gone from the story, and it is painful. You only get four characters, six for the whole roster, and when they're gone, you know, wow. And I can only imagine what that would be like if you're on book four or book five, and you've had such a epic story of your own, plus the one that's written, and you're like, you watch them go. And so that would be so rough. And I think that's so important for the book to have. You can replace your character. So if somebody dies, you can replace it with another with a roster you never chose. You can't choose the same one again, or you can create a character and have them bring them on. But they're gonna be basic. They're gonna start afresh. The game also has an economy. You will be getting money and selling things. Like you find a sword, you're gonna have to decide whether you want to keep it or sell it. Um, there will be trade goods from one port to a next. I did mention ports. There's a reason for that. That's because you can own one of multiple different types of boats, and the different type matters. You will have to pay for repair and upkeep for those boats. So it is that and that's that system is absolutely awesome. It has a magic system. And it is component based, like the old school D&D, where you had to have certain number of ingredients, but instead of actually having to have the ingredients, you simply go to a place of rest and you pay the amount of silver that would have costed to refresh that magical spell. There are a total of six that you can choose from at start, and in a really cool piece, you can't just, at least not that I found, you can't go out and buy the spells, but you find them. So you'll get into a dungeon, you'll be like, oh wow, this place looks like it might be magical, and you see some sort of a rune on the wall or something, and you'll be like, oh, maybe I might be able to find a spell here. And so that sense of exploration and discovery, even beyond the magic, just for the equipment and things and places that you might find, is seriously, seriously ever present here. And that was true in Fabled Lands, but I really feel it here. It is awesome. I just want to keep on exploring and seeing what I can find. I'll go into a dungeon and then I pushed too far. I'm gonna get out of this dungeon and I'm gonna trek myself, however many miles back to the town. Hope I can make it, rest, and then go back. It's just an awesome system with the mechanics and the way that they've done this game. It does have armor. We did mention equipment. You can have weapons, shields. You'd have I mentioned like leather armor, etc. The way the armor works is that if you have three armor and you take three damage, you get to roll three dice. You have to roll against a four or above. If you do, you block that many points of damage up to literally down to all the way down to zero. If you have three armor and you take two damage, you only get to roll two dice. It's up to the amount of damage you take. Obviously, you're not going to be healing damage. It's just a really great system. So I want to talk a little bit about the game world. The game does have an overworld like world map, and it does have a local map. It's been a while since I looked, so I'll have to find that, but it does have a local map. And you, just like in, say, like the Fabled Land series, you can generally, when you're reading the text, they'll ask you, do you want to go south? Do you want to go southwest? Do you want to head north? And you'll be able to work your way through the text by looking at this map. The map is important, right? The features on the map are important. They'll tell you what you can expect to run into. And as you can see, there's a lot of different locations. And within these individual places, there's other locations. Sometimes there's a city and there's a location like a city and maybe there's a dungeon or something similar to that within that city. Um, the things that you do in this book will matter, not only in this book, but in the books to follow. The things that you do in those other books will matter here as well. It goes backwards and forwards. If you do a particular deed, you're likely to be remembered for that. If you side with this person over that person, it's going to be remembered. And it does use a keyword system. It does that very, very, very well. Um, you feel like, or at least I did, felt like I was in a role playing campaign. I think they absolutely achieved their goal where I just want to again want to go back and play through it again. I played through this with my fiance, and she loved it. There was so much decision, so much consequence for better or for worse that we had to deal with, and there was a lot of not, figurative nail biting going on. So just loved it. We were so ready for the next print to come so we can carry on our character's adventure. We're so excited. But just a really, really wonderful start to the series. Cannot wait. I did play through a little bit of the PDF. I didn't get too far. It's kind of like I got the taste of it, and then I wanted the real meaty deal in my hands, and so I'm really looking forward to reading through that as soon as I get a copy of that in my hands. I'm definitely going to go through that and talk a little bit about how that continues on and interacts. So there was some interaction I saw there, but I want to get through the whole thing. But an amazing series. I cannot wait. At this point, I'm pretty much vested until they're done, and I'm really looking forward to doing that and playing through it again and again and again. Just an amazing, amazing world and an amazing piece of work. Amazing.